All right, so we're diving into Family Guy Season 24, Episode 14. And let me tell you, this one feels like it was written on a dare. Sometimes you watch these episodes and you wonder what the writers were drinking. This one, I'm pretty sure it was lukewarm coffee and the existential dread of realizing they've been making the show for over 2 decades. We're talking about a lot of plot threads, a lot of weird character moments, and a saxophone solo that'll haunt your dreams. It starts off with the classic theme song, same as it ever was, reminding us that the world's gone nuts with violence and sex, but where are those good old-fashioned values? And then bam, it's Family Guy. Lucky there's a Family Guy, indeed. This episode, however, doesn't exactly answer that question with a heartwarming tale. It's more of a chaotic scramble through Peter's latest ill-conceived schemes and Joe's accidental brilliance. What's really wild is how they managed to fit so much into this, like they were cramming for a final exam on sitcom tropes. We've got parent-teacher conferences that aren't, school fundraisers that are more like garage sales for neglected instruments, and an entire subplot about the horrors of online college advertising that's somehow more disturbing than anything the actual Griffin family does. And the sheer audacity of that masked singer segment, it's like they just threw it in there because they ran out of ideas for actual jokes. But don't worry, because if there's one thing this episode proves, it's that Peter Griffin is a force of nature, and sometimes that nature is pure, unadulterated chaos. The sheer nerve of this episode, the way it juggles so many insane ideas, makes you wonder if the writers just spun a giant wheel of plot points and went with whatever it landed on. I mean, who greenlit the idea of a saxophone solo as the emotional core of an episode? It's wild, it's messy, and it's absolutely going to leave you with some questions. But stick around because we're going to try and unpack this whole wild ride. If you're enjoying this deep dive into Griffin family madness, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. It's like a reminder to your brain that more Family Guy chaos is coming. And honestly, who doesn't need that? It's less of an announcement, more of a public service. So what is this episode actually about? On the surface, it's a couple of things. You've got Peter and Lois going to what they think is a parent-teacher conference, but it turns out to be a fundraiser for the school's music program, which is about as organized as a flock of pigeons at a bread factory.
Peter, being Peter, immediately tries to leverage this into a way to avoid responsibility, but ends up buying a saxophone because he hears it can play Careless Whisper. Meanwhile, Joe Swanson gets his hands on some ridiculously strong sleeping pills from Quagmire, which naturally leads to him sleepwalking and becoming the coolest, most popular guy in town. It's a classic Family Guy two-hander, Peter's idiocy and Joe's bizarre accidental triumph. But peel back those layers and you've got an episode wrestling with a few ideas. There's the ongoing commentary on the decline of arts programs in schools, which is pretty standard for shows like this, but they wrap it around Peter's shallow desire for a specific song. Then there's the whole online college bit, which is a hilarious and bleak look at how people seek easy ways out, or how society pushes those options. But the real thematic meat, the thing that makes this episode stick in your brain, is the exploration of identity and escapism. Joe, when he's sleepwalking, becomes this idealized version of himself, Joey Goodtimes. He's confident, he's popular, he throws epic parties. It's a commentary on how sometimes the person we wish we were is only accessible when we're not consciously trying to be them. It also makes you think about what makes us us. Is it our actions when we're awake and aware, or the potential that lies dormant when we're not in control? The show's saying something, perhaps unintentionally, about the pressure to be something you're not, and how sometimes the best version of yourself shows up when you least expect it. In the grand scheme of Season 24, this episode feels like a mid-tier entry. It's got a couple of solid laughs and a surprisingly interesting character arc for Joe, but it doesn't exactly reinvent the wheel. The writing is a bit uneven. The fundraiser plot feels like it's just there to set up the saxophone joke, and the Joe plot feels like it could have been its own episode. There are moments where the jokes land perfectly, and others where they just feel there. Visually, it's standard Family Guy fare. Nothing groundbreaking, but the animation does its job. The pacing is decent, mostly keeping things moving, but that saxophone solo really takes its sweet time. My verdict? It's a pretty good episode, maybe a 7.2 out of 10. It's got enough going on to be entertaining, and Joe's storyline is a definite highlight. It's not a classic, but it's far from the worst. It's an episode that's trying to say something about who we are, and sometimes it gets there in the most roundabout Family Guy way possible.
Let's dive into some of the moments that really made this episode an episode. First up, that opening scene at the school fundraiser. You've got Peter and Lois getting this rundown of how they're selling off instruments, and Peter's immediate reaction to seeing a vintage 2022 junior varsity uniform. He's not thinking about the kids or the music program or anything remotely responsible. No, he's thinking about dinner napkins. "Sir, I'm going to have my team cut it up and turn it into dinner napkins." And the principal, Giuseppe, calls him a wizard. A wizard! It's the perfect encapsulation of how this show operates, taking something mundane and twisting it into pure, unadulterated absurdity. The setup is the fundraiser. The punchline is Peter's utter lack of empathy and his obsession with wasteful practicality. What it's actually saying is that people like Peter are so disconnected from reality that they see potential utility in the most inappropriate places. It's a commentary on how easily we can overlook the substance of things in favor of some bizarre personal gain, even if that gain is just slightly fancier napkins. What I would have done differently? Honestly, maybe lean into the wizard thing a bit more. Have Giuseppe offer Peter some magical powers related to textiles. It's Family Guy. Why not? My personal reaction? I laughed my ass off. The idea of using a kid's sports uniform as a napkin is just so perfectly stupid. Then there's the whole Careless whisper saxophone plot point. Peter sees the saxophone, hears it can play anything with practice, and immediately asks if it comes with Careless whisper. The implication is, of course, that he wants it now, without practice. And when he gets it, he plays it terribly, waking up Lois and the whole house. This joke is built on the anticipation of a recognizable song and the immediate subversion of that expectation by Peter's ineptitude. It's funny because we all know the song, and we know Peter is going to butcher it. It's saying something about Peter's desire for immediate gratification and his inability to achieve anything through sustained effort. He wants the glory of playing a classic song, but none of the work. It's a metaphor for his entire life, really. If I were writing it, I'd have Peter try to get out of the parent-teacher conference by playing the saxophone badly, and the teacher would actually say, "Wow, that's unique," and then Lois would just drag him out. It's funnier if the world around him reacts with confusion rather than just annoyance.
My reaction? I felt that familiar pang of secondhand embarrassment, but it was mixed with the pure joy of knowing a classic Family Guy gag was unfolding. Next up, the masked singer bit. This is peak absurdity. They're scraping the bottom of the barrel for costumes, they say, and then the reveal is just some D-lister. Peter is furious because he's endured Ken Jeong for this moment. The setup is the anticipation of a reveal. The punchline is that the reveal is meaningless and Peter's invested way too much emotional energy into it. What it's saying is a commentary on our obsession with celebrity culture and reality TV and how we get invested in things that ultimately have no substance. It's also a jab at the longevity of Family Guy itself, implying that they're now in the territory of scraping the bottom of the barrel for ideas. What I would change? Make the reveal even more anticlimactic, like it's just a random guy from the crew. Or better yet, make it another character we already know, like Herbert, but nobody recognizes him. That would be truly messed up. My personal feeling here is that this joke is hilarious because it's so self-aware of the show's own state. It's the writers poking fun at themselves. Then we get to Joe's storyline kicking off with those sleeping pills. Quagmire gives him these powerful, unregulated sleeping pills from the Navy for guys who commit atrocities and can't sleep. The sheer, unadulterated darkness of that premise is amazing. The setup is Joe's inability to sleep. The punchline is the extreme, almost criminal source of his solution. It's saying something about how desperate people will go to extreme measures for relief and how the world of military veterans has its own dark, unspoken secrets. It's also a character moment for Quagmire, showing he has these unconventional connections. What would I change? Maybe show a brief flashback of Quagmire getting the pills, something really grainy and ominous. Or have Joe ask if they come with a warning label, and Quagmire just says, "For the ethically compromised." My reaction? I was immediately intrigued and slightly disturbed. Family Guy often flirts with the morbid, and this was a perfect example of them leaning into it. The next big moment is Joe sleepwalking and being amazing. He's walking, he's talking, he's throwing the most epic party ever as Joey Goodtimes. The contrast between awake Joe, who's confined to a wheelchair, and sleepwalking Joe, who's a social butterfly, is the entire joke. It's the fantasy fulfillment we all have, wishing we were cooler, more confident, more capable. What it's saying is that sometimes the limitations we perceive in ourselves are just that, perceptions, and that the potential for greatness might be locked away when we're not stressed or trying too hard. It's a powerful message, delivered through the most absurd means possible. My pitch? Have Peter try to force Joe to be Joey Goodtimes while awake, creating this bizarre Frankenstein's monster of personality. It would highlight the artificiality of it all. My reaction? Pure delight.
Watching Joe's friends fawn over him, seeing the transformation, it was a genuinely feel-good moment, despite the dark origins. Then, the doctor scene. Dr. Alex Guerrero, the pseudoscience expert and Tom Brady face thinner outer. The description itself is a joke. He uses imagination to diagnose Joe. The setup is a medical mystery, the punchline is a charlatan doctor who uses woo-woo science. It's a clear parody of celebrity wellness culture and the people who exploit it. It's saying that the pursuit of health and wellness can be a breeding ground for snake oil salesmen, especially when there's a profit motive. What would I change? Have Dr. Guerrero actually try to do something ridiculous, like inject Joe with a juice cleanse or make him do a float tank. The current version is good, but a bit more action would amp it up. My reaction? I love a good parody of fringe science and celebrity doctors. It's always right for laughs, and this one hit the mark. The final big moment I want to touch on is Joe's friends trying to get him to take the pills again. They tell him he was so much more interesting. Joe, who was initially horrified by the idea of losing himself, is now tempted because he wants that popularity back. It's a sad commentary on how easily we can fall back into destructive habits if they promise to make us feel better or more accepted. The setup is Joe's desire for his old life. The punchline is him willingly walking back into danger. It's saying that the allure of escapism and validation can be incredibly powerful, even when we know the consequences. What would I do differently? Have Bonnie be the one to encourage him, saying, "Oh, Joe, you were so much fun when you were Joey Goodtimes. Let's do it again." That would be a darker, more interesting turn. My reaction? It felt like a tragic inevitability. You see Joe's arc in this episode, and this ending feels earned, even if it's a downer. It shows how easily we can be swayed by external validation. Okay, let's talk about the characters in this episode, specifically how they're shining or not shining. First up, Peter Griffin. In this episode, he's less the bumbling idiot who accidentally saves the day and more just an agent of chaos. His entire plot thread revolves around a school fundraiser and a saxophone. He's not even trying to be responsible. He's just trying to get a song he likes. It's peak Peter, sure, but it's not particularly compelling. His best moment is probably his reaction to the vintage uniform, wanting to make napkins. It's stupid, but it's the kind of stupid that makes you laugh. However, he feels a little bit like he's just there to set up jokes for other people, particularly Joe. His role in this episode says that the show still relies on him being the anchor of nonsense, but sometimes that anchor is dragging them down. Lois, on the other hand, is mostly the straight woman here, reacting to Peter's antics and the general absurdity of the school. She's fine, she's doing her Lois thing, but she doesn't really have a defining moment. She's the voice of reason that's constantly ignored, which is her usual role, but it doesn't make for exciting viewing in this particular episode. Her best moment is probably her exasperation when Peter talks about his shrew card. It's relatable, but not exactly groundbreaking. She's used effectively enough to move the plot, but she's not given much to do beyond that. Joe Swanson. This episode is his episode, through and through. He goes from being the relatively downtrodden, stuck in a wheelchair cop to this incredibly popular, charismatic sleepwalker. His journey from awake Joe to Joey Goodtimes and back again is the heart of the story. His best moment is clearly the initial sleepwalking and the party. The sheer transformation is amazing. It makes you wonder about the character's potential and how much of his limitations are mental versus physical. This episode definitely elevates Joe, showing that there's more to him than just his disability. It might even suggest the show wants to explore more of his repressed desires or alternate personas. Quagmire is basically just the facilitator of Joe's transformation, the guy with the shady Navy connections and the slightly questionable moral compass. He's funny in his usual sleazy way, and his Peter Griffin survival kit idea is a classic Quagmire bit of cynical pragmatism. His role is functional, setting up the plot device for Joe.
He's used well for what he is, a plot device and a source of edgy jokes. Meg is barely in this episode, a throwaway line about college tuition. She's just there. Her biggest contribution is being a punchline about money. It's a shame. She could have done more, but the show rarely uses her for anything beyond that. Brian, likewise, is pretty much absent. He's mentioned in passing, but he's not a driving force in either plot. He's just part of the background noise. He's used as a sounding board for Peter's awful ideas, which is typical, but he doesn't get any real shine here.
Now for the fun part, digging into the little things you might have missed. First, that going out of business woodwind sale. Mr. Campanelli is clearly heartbroken, and the line, "everything must blow," is a classic double entendre that's easy to miss if you're not listening for it. It's a subtle joke that adds a layer of desperation and dark humor to the music teacher's plight. Most people probably just heard a slightly crude joke and moved on, but it's a really well-crafted pun that speaks to the dire situation. It matters because it highlights the show's knack for clever wordplay, even in the background. Then there's the TV announcer's bit about Turner Classic Movies. If a woman gets slapped in black and white, we've got it. This is a hilarious and scathing indictment of a very specific niche of older films, where melodramatic reactions and physical altercations were frankly abundant. It's the kind of commentary that requires you to know the tropes of classic Hollywood cinema to fully appreciate the wit. It's a quick jab, but it perfectly captures a certain era of filmmaking. It matters because it shows the writers are watching and commenting on culture, not just making random jokes. You also have the detail about Dr. Alex Guerrero's company name, Guerrero Shipping Solutions LLC. This is a brilliant bit of misdirection. It sounds official, but the shipping solutions part is so generic and vague, and it comes after he's been spouting pseudoscience, that it's clearly meant to be a way to launder money or operate outside the lines. It's a subtle jab at how these supposed wellness gurus often have complex, opaque business structures. It's a small detail, but it adds another layer to the satire. Then, during Joe's party as Joey Goodtimes, someone mentions bonfire as a nickname for a woman because she's smoking hot. Peter then immediately calls her dumpster fire because of her hair.
This is a bit of rapid-fire joke construction. The initial nickname is based on a positive attribute, and Peter immediately twists it into a negative, based on a completely unrelated and superficial detail, her hair. It's a callback to Peter's tendency to be cruel and nonsensical with nicknames. It matters because it shows Peter's unchanging nature, even when he's supposed to be in a social setting where he should be more composed. It's a quick insult that feels very true to him. Let's play the what-if game for a sec. The first thing I'd change is the entire parent-teacher conference setup. Instead of Peter thinking it's a conference and it turning out to be a fundraiser, what if they knew it was a fundraiser and Peter actively tried to sabotage it to avoid any responsibility, accidentally causing the music program to be underfunded in a more dramatic way? That way, the saxophone joke wouldn't feel so random. It would be Peter's direct fault. The current version feels like a series of disconnected gags. My version would have Peter's core selfishness be the direct cause of the problem, making his actions more impactful, and maybe even giving Lois a stronger reason to be angry. The second thing I'd reconsider is the ending with Joe. The whole "he's done with the pills but might take them again" felt a little too neat, or maybe too predictable. What if, after his friends encourage him to take them again, he flat out refuses, but then something else happens that gives him that same Joey Goodtimes feeling, proving that he can achieve that without the pills? Maybe he stands up for himself in a genuinely brave way, or he accidentally does something heroic. It would show character growth beyond the sleepwalking gimmick. The current ending feels like a regression, whereas my version would offer a glimpse of true development. It would show that the experience changed him, not just that he got a temporary escape. So this episode of Family Guy Season 24, Episode 14, lands at a solid 7.4 out of 10. It's not a home run, but it's definitely not a strikeout. The point 4 comes from Joe's storyline, which was genuinely engaging and surprisingly thoughtful for this show. The main plot with Peter and the fundraiser felt a bit like filler to get to the saxophone gag. This episode is for the longtime fans, the ones who appreciate the show's ability to occasionally surprise you with character depth, even if it's buried under a mountain of Peter's idiocy. New viewers might be a bit lost by the sheer absurdity and the disparate plot threads.
What would have pushed it higher? A more cohesive connection between Peter's plot and Joe's plot. Or maybe if Peter's saxophone playing actually did something significant, instead of just being annoying. The ending really loops back to the beginning, doesn't it? We started with Peter's self-serving actions at a school event and ended with him potentially continuing a harmful habit because of social pressure, all while Joe's story explored the darker side of escapism and identity. It's a fittingly messy conclusion for an episode that's all about the messy business of being human, even when you're an animated character making questionable choices. The show might be in its 24th season, and while some episodes feel like they're just going through the motions, moments like Joe's transformation show that there's still a spark of creativity, even if it's occasionally fueled by, well, whatever Quagmire was selling.